Hello, my name is Dr. Frampton Gwinnett from the Autism News Network, and we are on the road today in Audubon, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia, for a very special interview with an expert in the area of autism. I'm here with Mikell Nigro.
Expert, I love it.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm gonna just go ahead and fire away if that's all right.
Do it.
Sure. So, what kind of work do you do?
So I am a certified special education teacher. I have been in the field, this is my 19th year.
Wow.
So I have taught, in Pennsylvania we have what they call approved private schools, which are approved by the state. And basically they receive state and school district funding. So I worked at an approved private school for 14 years, and that was strictly for students with diagnosed with autism or with PDD NOS.
Okay, so this was the Timothy School?
Correct.
Okay, that's a really great school, right?
It's an excellent school. It's an excellent school. We our biggest focus was working with students and utilizing the teach method.
Okay. And that's out of North Carolina?
It is.
Okay, tell me, what is the teach method?
So the teach method is we consider it structured teaching. It's a way of structuring everything from the physical areas that our students are in to making things visually clear for our students to really decrease behaviors and anxiety.
Okay.
So it would be everything from the schedule that they access during the day to individualized work systems that they'd work through, even when working one-to-one with the students. So it's just a way of structuring visually and physically structuring their environments to make it clear what's expected.
Yeah, and I've heard it's like the teach method kind of comes from the viewpoint of understanding the culture of autism, like what it's like just in their world.
Yep.
Awesome. So, like, what kind of schooling did you have?
So my schooling, I went to, we have a university here called Westchester University. And in this area, it is known for education.
Okay.
So back when I went to college, I specialized in special education. Yeah. So that's what my certification is in.
Okay, excellent. And then after college, you went to college for 4 years, and after college, you did some extra schooling, right?
Yep, I did. I got my master's in curriculum and instruction.
Okay.
So did that a few years later.
Awesome. And then you recently transitioned from the private school setting to public school, right? Tell us about that.
So after 14 years at the Timothy School, I actually made a huge switch over to a school district. So I actually work at Lower Merion School District, which is just outside the Philadelphia border. It's a pretty large school district. So we have two different high schools. I'm at Lower Merion High School. Okay. So we have about almost 1,500 students in that building. Yeah. And a pretty large special ed department. So when I made that transition, I actually segued a little bit away from autism. I'm still in working with students with autism, but I also now have students with ID, you name it.
Developmental delays and cerebral palsy and seizures. And,
medically, some more medically fragile, most medically fragile students in the district are in our program. So it's a more life skills based program, but all things that we were doing at the Timothy School as well. So it kind of, it was a fairly easy transition in one regard, but also very different. Yeah.
So I was going to ask next, like going back, it sounds like from a young age you knew you wanted to be a special education teacher, but how did you first get interested in working with kids or young adults with autism or special needs?
So, I think I always liked working with kids. I had from like 14, I'd worked at day camps. I enjoyed being with kids, and I get into high school, and through a friend of mine, I befriended one of the special ed teachers. Yeah. To be honest, I didn't even know that's what she was. I just knew my friend went there for some math help, and that was it. So I would sometimes go with him to hang out in this classroom, and all of a sudden she asked me if I would mind during one of my free periods tutoring one of her students. At that, she didn't really explain it to me, but really he was a student that needed a little more typical peer interaction and would benefit from a typical peer working with him on his academics. Correct. So I loved it. I thought he was hysterical, and I loved working with him.
Yeah.
And through that process, I'm a senior at this point, and I was now applying to schools. I knew I wanted to go into teaching. I just, what area? I just didn't know. And I guess I was talking with her about it, and she said, "You need to be a special ed teacher." And I'm like, "What's that?" I didn't even know.
Even then, she saw that you had the talent for it.
So she was like, "You need to do special ed." And, "Oh, what's that?" She goes, "Listen, it's a field and it's growing by leaps and bounds. There will always be jobs." I was like, "Well, I like the sound of that. I'll do that."
Yeah, and there's a big need out there, and you're serving that need.
So I literally kind of stumbled into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in case the audience doesn't know, teachers work very, very hard. And a lot of teachers say they hardly even have time to go to the restroom during the day. It's so
Sometimes
busy.
That's true.
Yeah, so what would you say are some other challenging aspects of the work that you do?
I would say, the paperwork is tough.
Yeah.
I currently have a caseload. They consider us, I'm a special ed teacher, but I'm a case manager. So there's certain students that I have to make sure all of their paperwork is lined up. So the paperwork aspect of things, so tracking the behavioral data, making sure the IEPs and the reevaluation reports are all lined up with the appropriate dates. And then you have I almost call it like PR. Like you're almost doing PR with these parents of working with them, and you do work so closely with them almost daily. So
to get an alliance and get on the same page.
Yeah. With all of it. So, there's so many just aspects to it, and you just have to kind of, sometimes it gets overwhelming.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, where do I start?
Exactly.
So,
you got academics, you got behaviors, and there's also not only what's going on with one kid, but it's also the mix of the kids in the classroom with the teachers.
And I'll often have my class students that aren't necessarily on my caseload, but I do have to be familiar with what their academic goals and needs are.
Right.
And, how to best support them. And if they have a behavior plan, what am I doing to support that?
Yeah.
And then on as well as the staff that I have working in my room.
Yeah.
So you have to, you need to make sure everybody's on the same page. I can't be with every student every minute of the day. So a lot of my students do have one-to-ones, so making sure they understand the expectation, what is needed throughout the day for that student.
So, for those who don't know, what's a one-to-one?
So that would be a student that an individual, an adult that we assign to a specific student.
Okay, are they a teacher or not a teacher?
They are not. So they are not all in our district, and not every district is like this, but in our district, our one-to-ones do need to have a bachelor's degree. And usually they look for people that have some experience with students, with children, hopefully with individuals with special needs, so that they have some understanding of what they're coming into.
So they get it, but
hopefully,
they're not necessarily educators.
Correct.
Okay, so
correct. And most of them get into it because they love working with students with special needs.
Yeah. Speaking of that, can you tell us a little bit about what your favorite part of your job is?
Oh, the kids.
Yeah.
Literally, even on a Monday morning after a long weekend, after a weekend, and having to get up on Monday and come into work, my kids will come trickling into my room at 7:15 in the morning, and they're so happy to be there. I'm like,
ready.
And you can't get upset with that. You're like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Of course.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you have that bond with them. So I work with a lot of parents, and their kids, of course, and a lot of the parents have struggles in terms of just many things, managing their child's life and their behaviors and their academics. And a lot of times they can be frustrated with things that are happening at the school or just things that are happening in the home. And I'll tell them a quote from Peter Gerhardt. I want to see your response to it. The quote is, "Anything good that ever happened in the world of autism happened because of a parent." Now, you know Peter Gerhardt, I understand.
do.
Yeah, what do you think of that quote?
I do know Peter Gerhardt. I've heard him speak in person a number of times. He's fabulous. In terms of that quote, I just really think, these parents, I'm a parent. I'm a parent of 2 kids. And I look at these parents and I sometimes have to remind the staff that I work with, we've got it easy. We have these kids 7 hours out of the day. We're here to support them and give them the best that we can.
Yeah.
These parents, they live this, and the good, the bad, the ugly, they've got the hardest struggle of all of us. And, I really I have such empathy for these parents, and, wherever they are in the process of with their child, and I can't necessarily always understand that, but the good that I see in those kids when they come in every day, it's
the progress.
It directly reflects on the families that are supporting them.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have nothing but love and support for these parents, and
absolutely.
I really try to kind of when I'm frustrated, with whatever, I really do try to take a step back and think about what they're living.
Yeah,
because
that's great.
I don't know what that's like, but I really try to understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. So a lot of times when working with parents, I talk to them about getting an IEP or updating the IEP, but maybe we could start at the beginning and just have you tell us, what is an IEP?
Okay, an IEP, that's very kind of elementary, but okay.
Yeah.
An IEP is an individualized education plan.
Okay.
That is, it is to be updated annually.
Yeah.
I feel like one of the things with making my transition to this larger school district that has a fabulous special education program, and that was one of the reasons I made that transition.
Yeah.
They are known for their special education.
Okay.
People move into this school district for special education, is the fact that, you don't get complacent with your IEPs. We have to, with the parent and everything, we approach it as a draft always until we are sitting at the table discussing it all together. Is looked at really from year to year. What is still appropriate and what still needs to be changed, and trying to kind of set the bar for these kids academically, socially, behaviorally every year, and look a little bit to the future, which can be really hard to do.
Yeah, so if a parent were coming into their first IEP, or let's say something was off track at school behaviorally or academically, what would you recommend parents do before the IEP, like to get ready or, to be prepared?
I read through it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's my biggest thing. Our protocol is we always draft an IEP and we send it home within 3 days in advance of the meeting.
Okay.
I would suggest that parents maybe ask for that. Ask for a draft a few days ahead of time, because
that's
being able to sit at the table and kind of, read through it, know what you're looking at, and have questions kind of ready. Because, as a teacher, we're on a time constraint, but doesn't mean though that we can't come back together as a team, which we do often do. We allot, and it shocks me sometimes, but we allot 1 hour for our IEP meetings. But that doesn't mean we will adjourn the meeting and get another in the books, in the calendars for the next few weeks, and come back together and finish it up.
Yeah. So a couple of points there, just to emphasize for the audience. It sounds like parents can request a draft of the IEP beforehand, so they can read through it and have questions ready in advance. That way they don't feel like they're walking into an ambush or some kind of a surprise situation. And then if an hour is not enough time to complete that IEP process, the team can quickly convene again and finish it out very soon. Yeah. Okay.
And I think as a teacher, and I'll sometimes say to the parents, I'll send a draft home, 3-4 days in advance, and I'll say to them, listen, this is really the meat and potatoes of it, but I'm gonna review it again before we meet. That way, and I always find some things that come up again. But I'll always kind of, as a teacher, I put little tabs on the pages that I want to kind of come back to. One of the things that we also do is we'll kind of give the parents an outline of what we're going to follow throughout the meeting, because it does get confusing with. We have an OT, we have a PT, we have a speech therapist. So many layers that are a part of this, and just to try to keep us on track.
So you've got kind of an itinerary for the meeting so they can be guided. Okay.
Yeah. So I will come to the meeting with that itinerary of what we're going to do. But I mean, that's really what I do for the annual IEP. But we do sit-down revisions with our families all the time.
Okay.
So what we'll do is, I just had 2 meetings this week, and it's the first week of school, to talk about what the year is going to look like for these students. So we sat down as a team, discussed everything, the academics,
And that's not the annual meeting, it's just kind of like a little
Nope,
tweak or,
just a revision.
Yeah.
And I will make sure that it's noted that we're doing a revision and why we're doing a revision, and kind of summarize what that meeting was all about. And so after we sit down, if there are changes that are being made to their programming, and I'm assuming they do that as well in South Carolina, we will do what they call a NOREP, Notice of Recommended Educational Placement, and that'll just kind of list for the parents what the placement is going to look like, their academics, anything extra that we're giving them if it's community work, and then the parents will sign off on it that they are in agreement.
Gotcha.
So that way it's very clean.
Okay. Starting Project Rex in 2008, I've had the opportunity to see a lot of kids come through our program, maybe starting at age 5 and age 6, and now 10 years later, we're seeing a lot of them get close to adulthood. And do you have any advice for how parents need to adapt their IEP as the child's entering the age of graduation, whether it be 18 or 21, when they leave high school? Because I know a lot of times parents say it's like falling off a cliff with the amount of services for adults. Yeah,
it's scary, and I know I often see my parents that come in from 8th grade and they're now 9th grader.
Yeah.
It's a scary time for them because they're now looking at this window that's not very big of the time that's left and what do we need to do.
Yeah.
So I think my biggest suggestion is to know the resources that are out there.
Yeah.
Know what that's all about. I think also I'm very lucky that my students, when they're usually seniors, most of my students do choose to stay till 21. So they have those extra years at the end, which is great.
Where they're still progressing academically, but they're also served by the school district?
We are still supporting those academics, but our big focus is what do we need to do to get them ready for a workforce, a work site. Yeah. So we will actually place our students out into the community with a job coach who's also a district employee, and get them out into placements in the community.
And is that a pretty successful approach?
Extremely.
Okay.
Extremely. So we will start and again, it's not a cookie cutter approach. We look at each student individually, but we will usually start with our students attending something that's called the PAES Lab. It's PAES. Stands for Practical Assessment Exploration System. I think I have it right. It's basically a vocational kind of assessment. It's a hands-on vocational assessment that our district does have. So we run our students through that. It runs them through, I believe it's over 200 different types of tasks in 5 different areas.
To try to find what their strengths are.
Find their strengths, and some of our students who think their strength might be data entry, we then find their strength is actually building things. So but it runs them through everything from consumer service, so those more food type of placements, to business marketing, pretty much anything you can imagine. We then look at what their strengths are, what do they like, because that's what's really most important, but also how long does it take them to complete these tasks to be employable, because really there's a time to complete things to be an employable individual.
Okay.
So we look at those.
Yeah, and you mentioned, was it the Office of Vocational Rehab? Is that the name of it? Yeah. Okay, and the job coaches who are going out in the community, are those coaches through the Office of Vocational Rehab or through the district?
They're through the district.
Okay.
But so we do also stress to our parents the importance of registering with OVR. To make sure that after high school there is something to support them. Yeah. These community work placements have been extremely beneficial to our students. We have our students so after they run through the PAES Lab, we actually have them go out onto the community. So we have them everywhere from working in maybe a gym and doing cleaning and setup of areas, hospital placements. So we have students actually going out to one of our local hospitals, and they can do everything from being a greeter and giving directions, giving out parking vouchers, setting up the supplies in different outpatient rooms.
Sounds fun.
We have students that actually work at a couple of universities, so some are in cafeteria type placements, we've had some in media relations, so they're actually like downloading, filing things. They're actually taking information from the computers and making sure it's in an order and categorized and whatnot.
Perfect for maybe their interest or skill set.
Correct, depending on the student. We have
Yeah.
students that, absolutely not. That's not what they want to do. They want to be in more of a social setting. So we really look at that. So we're really lucky that we're able to provide those things and kind of see what fits. So we, I want to say 2 years ago I had 2 students who left our program and actually are now employed at Home Depot. So they are with a program called Ken's Crew. They're in Home Depot. They work like 20 hours a week. They're, one's in the paint department. So when the last I visited him, he gave me a bunch of paint samples.
Yeah, that's great.
So I could repaint a room. The other one is in like the hardware department. So it's a lot of stocking. Yeah. But they have the social aspect too, and they love what they're doing.
That's important.
And my one student actually said to me, he said, Mrs. Nigro, I get a paycheck.
Yeah.
He was so excited.
Get a paycheck and that self-esteem. You're doing something that you enjoy. That's so great.
Yep.
And hopefully working towards being more independent all the time.
It's amazing.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing, what your job is all about and where your passion lies. I wanted to ask you some other questions that we usually ask most of the people we interview. Mm-hmm. They're a lot easier and lighter. Okay. But we usually are based out of Charleston, South Carolina. Of course, we're outside of Philadelphia today, but I need to ask you, Carolina or Clemson?
Penn State.
Penn State. She threw me a curveball. Okay, and what is your favorite food?
Ooh, I'm in Philadelphia, so you're going to have to go cheesesteak or pizza.
Okay.
Hello.
Excellent. And what's the one food that you will never eat? Liver. All right, don't blame me for that. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, you're also a member of the Project Rex family. Can you elaborate on that?
I am lucky enough to be Dr. Gwinnett's baby sister.
That's
so.
Right. Yes. So we have it.
But I like to say I was in the field of autism first.
That's true. That's very true. Well, thank you for doing this.
Anytime. I was happy to do it. It was interesting to get interviewed by you.
Absolutely. So, we hope you'll come back again on the Autism News Network.
Will do. Maybe I'll have to travel down south and do an on-site interview.
When you're in town, look us up and we'll be glad to show you our studio and have you back with us.
Great.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.